Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. Questions we should be asking our Christian leaders in this coronavirus pandemic. Now before I get into it, like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or a comment, add it in the comment section below. All comments are welcome. You know, as this virus, this pandemic is spreading, United States remains number one in all categories. Remember, let me go back to my chart right here. The United States remains number one in total cases, 131 cases. Now this is going to go up. 7,000 new cases, 2,000 new cases. Actually, I shouldn't be reading this number because at the time I'm taping this is actually a couple of days. So these numbers probably have changed. And here's the interesting thing: they're going up. The problem with this, of course, again, let's go over this because I want to constantly remind us, because talking about this virus is not, it's not beating a dead horse because the horse is not dead. Meaning this, you all, this pandemic is, especially in America, spreading. We are number one in most infected cases. We are number one, and we're continually to grow. Now, to be fair, Italy probably should be listed as number one if you go per capita, because they have a much smaller population and a very more higher rate of infection. Okay, so Italy probably should be number one in terms of that when you compare. But here's the problem with the United States: we're continually growing. Okay, and of course the numbers that I'm reading, they're counting actual bodies as opposed to percentages. Here's the thing there: the virus, of course, has kind of brought the world and the economy to a slow crawl, right? And the reason why is that, one, this coronavirus, we don't have a cure for. I want to keep saying that. We don't have a cure for, meaning we don't have a vaccination for it. And the bigger problem, because we don't have a vaccination, is that this virus spreads at an increasingly rapid rate. The problem is that it's not like if you get a cold or a flu and you immediately start having symptoms. The problem with this virus is that you can be spreading this virus even though you're not showing symptoms. The virus itself is just, it can live on surfaces, especially hard surfaces, for hours, maybe even days. And you're touching these surfaces. You're coming in contact with infected people. And so this is a problem, because now people can't go out in masses as we are normally used to going out. The problem is that, of course, like I say, in America, we have been number one since we reached number one, and we're continually growing. Now that brings us, of course, to some churches. Now, so what is the religious answer to the churches? Now, I kind of did a video a couple of weeks ago about the same thing, that even God made preparations for infectious disease control. Meaning this: stop spreading it. Isolate, right? In other words, how do you stop the spread? And of course, back then it was leprosy. Leprosy was the highly contagious disease, and they didn't have a cure for it. Of course, today we have a cure for leprosy. But back then they didn't. When Moses enacted the law, they didn't have a cure. And like coronavirus, this thing was a highly contagious disease. First of all, when a person was discovered to have leprosy, they isolated him. Whatever his clothes, whatever he touched was eliminated. They burnt the clothes and everything. They did as best as they could a modern day sanitation. But keep in mind, the Bible said to do that. Now let's kind of come to the present day. What are some of our Christian leaders are saying? And this is kind of sad, because people like Kenneth Copeland, who's encouraging people to tithe, especially send the money to them. So remember, now that most governments, or at least in some kind of way, limiting the gathering of people, the movement of people, which they should. Why? Because you don't know who's infected. You may not even know you're infected, but you're touching stuff, and people are touching what you touch. You're coming in contact with people. People are coming in contact with you. And this thing spreads just that rapidly. But of course, it's putting a burden on the economy, which means, guess what? Charitable contributions are going to go down. Which brings me to, again, to some of our Christian leaders, because a lot of times you got, again, silly pastors who say, let's come to church anyway. We're going to go worship God anyway. Well, there have been a few pastors who have died. Not to say that there have been many church congregations who have been infected. Okay? Now, some of the questions that I would say, and this is going to be more of a rant, that with the rapid spread of this disease, how come some of our healers, those who supposedly God has anointed with healing, great opportunity to show off your healing skills, or, anointing, about prosperity. And you got people like Creflo Dollar saying, hey, here's a cash app, keep the tithes going. Kenneth Copeland, hey, send the tithe in, because after all, even though you are not working, even though you may not have food, God wants your tithe. Let me just say this. Kenneth Copeland is worth an estimated $700 million. How about, hey, you got plenty of money, Ken. Why don't you seed some of that money to people? And I'm not even suggesting that Kenneth Copeland give up his wealth. I really don't care about those guys. I don't care what kind of jet they fly in. I don't care what kind of mansions they live in. Here's the problem. You're burdening people. And in all of this stuff right here that you claim, all of the teaching now that people are claiming, where's the hundredfold return? Where's the blessings of the tithe? And all of this stuff. Now just think about that, y'all. And all of this. My question is, why don't you ask them? Kenneth Copeland, if I give my tithe, and by the way, there will be people who will give their last dime to a man who is worth $700 million. Talking about Kenneth Copeland. Creflo Dollars is probably estimated at worth of $30 million, and that could be more. Now, why do they want you? Why do they push this burden on you? Let me tell you why they push the burden on you. Well, they need to fund their ministries. Probably they need their ministries funded, and their television ministries funded. In other words, they're not thinking about, the welfare of the people. No, we need our money funded. In other words, they're going to be fine because many of them are wealthy. But it's going to hurt in the pocketbooks of the churches. And that's what they're trying to salvage. Hey, wait a minute. Kenneth Copeland and Creflo Dollar, isn't it time for you all to start withdrawing from the reserves of your heavenly bank accounts? That's what you taught. The laws of prosperity. Like I told you, God, this was pretty much a rant. I would ask the Benny Hinn, and I would ask all these fake healers. You have the greatest opportunity to start going to these hospitals. Hey, you don't even have to go in the hospitals. They're lined up outside. Just walk down and lay your hands on them and heal them. Because you're fake. So yeah, I'm ranting because even in this dire time, you have these pastors who are so selfish that they don't care about you. They don't care that you give your last dime, your last to fund their ministry. They don't care about that. And by the way, and they're not going to be around when you don't have. And they're not going to contribute to your lack. That's my perspective. As always, like and share this video and subscribe to BP The Bible Perspective. Till next time, I'll see you then.